That was too close. However, I prefer close to the alternative. If that bomb had gone off, well, let us just say, those of us left would all be learning how to speak Russian about now. Luckily, that is not the case. You and your team have foiled Stalin at every turn. And this was the coup de grace. The information obtained by your soldiers indicates those missiles was the only one Stalin had ready to launch. Was the atomic threat lifted? The time is right to launch our strike on the USSR. Your job is to clear the St. Petersburg area so that our ships can offer naval support to ground forces moving towards Moscow. Start by destroying the Soviet command center here. Once they are cut off from communications with Moscow, clear the naval passage so our ships can move up the river.
Welcome back, Commander. So it seems that, much like World War II, Stalin didn't really have much in terms of additional nuclear devices for us. I assume that the first thing you'll notice is the nice shiny timer that we have once again. Except this time it has a rather high 2-hour finish.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir.
The goal, if it wasn't clear from the briefing and the cutscene that we saw, is that we need to clear the way for our naval forces, implying that either we'll get some reinforcements or just some allied vehicles will be moving throughout the map.
Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Reporting. Affirmative.
Obviously, it's a little difficult to clear the way if you don't really know where that naval passage is, so, as always, it's a little handy to explore with some of your troops.
Waiting order. Very well. Reporting. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Waiting very well. Reporting. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Waiting order. Acknowledge. Yes, sir.
Now, technically, you could play this one of, I guess, two major ways. The first being to simply build where I did, and not really taking advantage of the fact that you have two MCVs. Or, if you were so inclined to explore a little bit at the start, maybe, start your base a little closer to the water. And I don't mean the northwestern body.
Reporting. Acknowledge. Reporting. Affirmative.
I should also mention that even though it's been a few episodes since we last saw it, it is important because it's, I guess, current to this recording, which is that I done goofed when I mentioned that the Chronosphere did not teleport naval units. I feel like for some reason I couldn't as a kid, and maybe that memory just I guess just I don't know, it convinced me that it wouldn't be a thing. Obviously, though, as I mentioned, you can't transfer a boat to ground and a ground unit to water, which kind of sucks. It'd be interesting if we could, I don't know, say Chronosphere, Iron Curtain vehicle into a body of water.
Construction complete.
Although, technically, you could always do the same thing, as long as you could find a more reclusive spot on the map.
Reporting. Acknowledge. Vehicle.
There's nothing quite like, say, teleporting a mammoth tank onto that little cliff hilltop, or...
Yes, sir.
I guess just a cliff hilltop. Anyways, Point is that you could easily teleport a unit to a more secluded area, and then they'd just be 100% useless.
Building.
Not that it would really prevent the AI from building anything, but
Very well.
always worthy of a chuckle or two.
Unit lost.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Awaiting order. Acknowledge. 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 Affirmative.
So going back to the multiple strategies of this level, building closer to the water just allows you to basically jumpstart your naval production really quickly. Which is probably a good thing if you're trying to clear the way for any friendly naval ships that might be coming in eventually. At the same time, I don't know, the mineral field at the top left of the base is kind of just a little garbage.
Reporting. Acknowledge.
And the one in the bottom left doesn't really offer too much either way.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir.
Not that we're experiencing the same problems as we used to see back in Tiberian Dawn,
Awaiting order. Affirmative.
but there's clearly better options.
Acknowledge.
I guess a third strategy, and it's more of just optional, is that
On my way.
technically there's no real reason not to use the second MCV. I mean, if you don't feel like creating a second base elsewhere
Construction.
and dividing your defenses and causing any issues in that department, then having a second MCV built just means that you'll build faster. Because again,
Unit ready.
construction yards work the same way as war factories and barracks, naval yards, etc.
For king and country, Commander. Indeed.
Low power. Construction complete.
I'm not sure if it's actually ever specifically come up, but it's interesting to note that apart from the AA gun, which is unlocked via the radar dome, every defensive structure that the Allies have all come from the barracks.
Commander, my way. Indeed.
So regardless if you feel like maybe the barracks isn't the best option, or if you want to jumpstart to go to the war factory, it's usually a good idea to also invest in that barracks really quickly. Especially considering it's only like $300.
On my way.
Construction
Yes, sir.
complete.
Reporting.
Cannot deploy. Reconstruction options. Building.
Vehicle report. Acknowledge.
Unit ready.
Yes, sir. Reporting. Acknowledge. Commander. Indeed.
Construction complete. Building.
Reporting. Affirmative.
We can see from the limited amount of fog of war that we've uncovered that the Soviets have a rather strong defense up front.
Building.
Commander. King and country.
Sadly, there doesn't seem to be any way to get around it.
For king and country.
Unit ready. Construction complete.
Commander. Indeed.
Building.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Awaiting order. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
I think it's fair to say that
Affirmative.
while artillery is useful,
Acknowledge. Affirmative.
especially for the purposes of killing infantry,
Yes, sir.
I really don't see much of a point in ever using them in my force composition. Sure, they can outrange flamethrower defenses, but so can the medium tank,
Affirmative. Reporting.
and maybe even the light tank, if I remember correctly.
Unit
Regardless, you have a much stronger unit
Affirmative.
available to you, and if you're ever having any real issues, you can always just crush infantry.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Awaiting. Affirmative.
Another big difference is just the health, disproportion.
building.
Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, acknowledge. Awaiting orders. Acknowledge.
Why bother with something that has pretty much like a third of a medium tank's HP.
Awaiting orders.
Lost.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No. Yes, affirmative. Affirmative. Reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative. Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. At once. Yes, affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, affirmative. Yes, sir. Reporting. Affirmative. Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Vehicle acknowledge. Yes, acknowledge. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Now, it might seem like a waste, but really this serves two purposes. One, I'm kind of hoping that the AI won't bother replacing any of its defenses,
Yes, affirmative.
because getting those two Tesla coils out of the way is very important. Secondly, killing those V2 rockets is also a really big deal.
Report. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
It might not always look like it, but having those things behind walls,
Yes, sir.
especially if they're double layered walls, it just takes forever for tanks to make their way across that.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Vehicle reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And finally, we have our GPS satellite that's up. Now, this is the one reason why you might want to save a second MCV. Now, all things said and done, if you did actually go with a naval yard strategy first, try to cross the water and so on,
Yes, sir.
you can probably expect quite a few submarines to be in the water over there.
Building infiltrated. Construction.
For some reason, I thought infiltrating the tech center gave me something,
Waiting orders.
Unit
but sadly, it doesn't.
is under
Report.
attack.
Yes, sir.
Building.
Acknowledge.
So it doesn't seem like the AI is too keen on rebuilding its Tesla coils, which is pretty good for me.
Yes, sir.
Primary building selected. Unit
Yes, sir.
ready.
Awaiting orders.
But getting back to the earlier strategies, I'm not quite sure if there's a bug that might have occurred,
Unit ready.
Reporting.
and this is kind of, you'll kind of notice it on the right side of the minimap.
Affirmative.
The AI is given a second base, and theoretically it should be doing something with that base. And yet, somehow the AI chooses to never build, it doesn't gather any resources, doesn't do anything really.
Affirmative.
At most, some of the vehicles and units will move around and,
Yes, acknowledge.
defend themselves against any aggression that you bring, but otherwise it
Building.
just kind of sits there.
Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Waiting orders.
Construction complete.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir.
I kind of wonder if maybe it's because the AI doesn't activate until you actually, say, bring an MCV over, because that's kind of, I guess, what they expect the player to do.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
But again, I don't, so maybe it's just some weird play the AI never figured I'd try.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Waiting order. Affirmative. Waiting order.
Unit
Affirmative.
lost.
Yes, sir.
Unit ready.
Yes,
Unit
affirmative.
lost. Cannot deploy here.
Yes, sir.
Unit
Affirmative.
lost.
Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
This is a really dumb idea, by the way.
Building.
Reporting.
Unit lost. Building.
Yes,
Construction
sir.
complete.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Cannot deploy here. Building. Unit ready. Construction complete. Cannot deploy here. Building.
Awaiting order. Affirmative.
I'm kind of panicking at this point because I really don't want to lose my construction yard. But thankfully, the AI doesn't really prioritize certain buildings if it's being attacked. So,
Acknowledge. Reporting.
a rush down of its long-range artillery saved the day there.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Building.
Vehicle reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. No. Yes, affirmative. Vehicle reporting.
Unit ready. Building.
Vehicle reporting. Affirmative. Vehicle reporting. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Training.
And now, since I've basically taken over the AI's base, I'm kind of free to do whatever I want.
Acknowledge. Yes, affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Now, there's a couple caveats. Obviously, there's still a large water area to cover and try to secure. And there's still a large variety of Tesla coils that are all just sitting on an island. However, I don't know if there's
Yes, sir.
if it's a goof by the developers, but
Building selected.
you can kind of get around that problem. Of the island, that is.
Unit ready.
Engineering. Affirmative. Reporting. Affirmative. Reporting. Acknowledged.
Oh, and because the AI was repairing its building.
Acknowledged.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Awaiting order.
Again, that's another reason why I don't like the engineers in this game.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
You just happen to take your, your attention away for a split second, and next thing you know, it repaired enough that your engineer is a $500 waste.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Could be worse, I guess.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Building. On hold. Fencing.
Reporting. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Construction options.
Reporting. Affirmative.
And now, basically, you have the pick of the litter of, what you want to do.
Construction complete.
Since I've captured, the enemy's construction yard, I don't really need to worry about capturing any other buildings.
Building.
Except, I guess, the tech center, just because it's so expensive.
Construction options. Building. Building. On hold.
Reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
ready.
Affirmative. Yes, sir. On my way. Yes, sir.
Now, you might think it's kind of weird to send a spy towards certain buildings, and sadly, you'd be half right to have that apprehension.
Building.
You see, depending on which building you infiltrate, you're given, like, a bonus. And I say a bonus because, well, the sub-pen is the only building that actually does anything, as far as I know.
Vehicle report. Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Every other building, from a helipad to a war factory to a barracks, they don't provide you with any bonus. I believe advanced power plants, if infiltrated, are supposed to take down the quote-unquote power grid for a set amount of time.
Awaiting order.
Although that could just be a custom or expansion mission that I'm just forgetting about.
On hold.
But getting back to the sub-pen, it's actually very useful. You see, getting a spy into the sub-pen gives you the ability to use a sonar pulse, which is, at least in this version of the game, a infinite use, as long as you can deal with the refresh timer, and basically reveals the location of all the submarines on the map.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
In terms of finding, that one dastardly vehicle or sub that's just hiding in a corner somewhere, the sonar pulse is invaluable. Especially in a mission like this, where you have to clear everything on the map.
Awaiting order.
Now, technically speaking, you don't have to clear the entire map. You could simply, wait out the timer, and much like Mission 2,
Reporting.
the vehicles should spawn and then move up. However, if you're losing ships, then maybe it wasn't a so good idea after all.
Being acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Now, here's why I think the developers goof.
Reporting.
I don't think you're supposed to cross there. It just seems so
On hold.
counterproductive.
Affirmative. Yes, sir.
For the AI, that is.
Waiting up.
And the only reason I'm losing any units is because the horrible pathfinding is making him go, look directly into some Tesla coils.
Reporting. Acknowledged. Vehicle reporting.
And here's also why I think it's very strange that the AI doesn't build on the right side of the map. There's plenty of minerals for them to get money with, and if they did, they'd be able to reinforce at least the barracks and the other airfields. I mean, they're doing that anyways, but you'd be able to do it more explicitly, I guess. And here's how the gap generator works. It generates a field of, I guess, anti-vision around the building itself.
Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Building.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
As an allied player, it's kind of a small guarantee that regardless of what happens, it won't be able to, like the enemy player, if they're playing as the Soviets, won't be able to use their air power against you. Because, again, you have to see something to be able to target it. The only exception being the spy plane that we seem to see fly over anywhere.
Construction complete.
I guess technically there's also scripted events, but that's not really important for this.
Building.
Yes, acknowledge. Acknowledge. Awaiting
Construction
affirmative.
complete. Cannot deploy here.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Awaiting affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
Building.
Vehicle acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Awaiting acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Building.
Reporting. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Awaiting order. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit ready. Building. Building.
Reporting. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Reporting. Affirmative.
Construction
Acknowledge.
complete.
Acknowledge.
It's pretty interesting that we still don't get the ability to actually build cruisers.
Affirmative. Acknowledge.
It really feels like that unit in particular is
Reporting.
Sonar pulse
Affirmative.
available.
not only very powerful as we've seen, but
Awaiting affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
very important to the tech level or strategy of the Allies.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledge.
They hold on to it long enough that once you actually get them, it's like really fun to start using them.
Naval
Vehicle
unit
acknowledged.
advanced.
Awaiting affirmative.
And that's the sonar pulse.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
Reveals units for, I guess, 10 seconds or so. And then once that's done,
Yes, sir.
the subs go back to being invisible.
Yes, sir.
Or, I guess, technically submerged.
Building.
As far as I recall, there's nothing that can actually prevent a sonar pulse from working.
Affirmative. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
Like a submarine has no defense against it.
Acknowledge.
Unit ready.
Awaiting orders. Awaiting orders. Affirmative. Awaiting affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Unit ready. Building.
Reporting. Vehicle acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
We've already seen just how efficient destroyers can be against land vehicles with their rockets, but
Yes, sir.
this is pretty much why I think that destroyers are
Yes, sir.
probably the best naval unit possible.
Affirmative. Awaiting order.
Insufficient funds.
Now, we've already had a limited view of just how far the range is for cruisers and how dangerous they can be.
Affirmative.
Unit ready.
But the main issue that I think that a lot of people gloss over is that
Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
the accuracy of a cruiser is just terrible.
Acknowledge. Reporting. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Sure, the player themselves can mitigate that just by, force targeting the ground somewhere else, but
Affirmative. Acknowledge.
ultimately,
Affirmative.
it's
Building.
Yes, sir.
much more of a hassle to use.
Naval unit.
The same applies when you're using a cruiser to destroy anything else, really.
Vehicle reporting. Awaiting orders. Acknowledge.
And while cruisers have very heavy armor and a large health pool,
Yes, acknowledge.
I would prefer having a destroyer because the destroyer can defend itself against air attacks.
Vehicle reporting. Vehicle reporting.
Building.
Vehicle acknowledged. Yes, affirmative. Acknowledged. Awaiting acknowledged. Awaiting affirmative.
Unit
Reporting.
ready.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Building.
Reporting. Acknowledged. Yes,
I guess another thing that, I mean, at least so far we've seen is that the destroyer has a fair amount of range anyways, so it's
Low power.
kind of hard to find maps that would only be useful for a cruiser.
Acknowledge. Awaiting affirmative.
Then again, we haven't seen the entirety of the Allied campaign, and none of the Soviet campaign, so maybe there's something in there that'll be more useful.
Vehicle affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
And again, it seems strange that the AI would, right before its final construction yard is destroyed, that it would
Structure.
like immediately decide it needs another airfield.
Affirmative. Awaiting orders. Vehicle reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
And who knows, maybe it was an issue that was always in the game
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
and not just coming from a patch slash unofficial patch version, but it's
Yes, sir.
just very noticeable.
Building.
Reporting. Affirmative. Reporting. Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Awaiting orders. Vehicle affirmative. Reporting.
Another thing that I guess should be pointed out, just for
Yes, sir.
how useful it is, it doesn't, I don't think I show it off explicitly,
Acknowledged.
but a sub-pen
Yes, sir.
counts just as much in terms of the naval yard production bonus as just more naval yards. So if you ever find yourself capturing the enemy's construction yard or an MCV, it's always a good idea to build their structures. Not only do you have an additional amount of different unit types that you can add to your own forces, but again, it boosts production speed.
Vehicle reporting. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Vehicle reporting. Affirmative.
Sonar pulse available.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Vehicle reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, no. Awaiting order. Yes, sir. No. Yes, sir. Affirmative. No. Vehicle reporting. Awaiting orders. Vehicle reporting. Yes, affirmative. Awaiting orders. Affirmative.
Yeah, despite clearing the entire water passage, it seems that, at least if I recall correctly, because I recorded this a while back, the sub-pen must also be destroyed.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Waiting orders. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Oh, well, maybe it turns out that there's a couple extra subs lying around.
Awaiting orders. Vehicle reporting. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Waiting. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Awaiting order. Reporting.
Unit ready.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir.
Gotta kill everybody, huh?
Affirmative.
Alright then, game.
Reporting. Reporting. Affirmative.
Sometimes it just doesn't want to give you the easy out,
Unit ready. Building.
which is actually kind of frustrating, as we'll see soon enough.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
Building.
Yes, sir. Reporting. Waiting order. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Unit ready.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Waiting orders. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's so nice having stuff automatically queue up to load and unload. Or, I guess just low.
Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Awaiting order. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Awaiting order. Awaiting order. Reporting. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Reporting. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Reporting. Affirmative. Awaiting orders. Yes, sir. Reporting. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Awaiting orders. Acknowledged. 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 Affirm. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Yeah, I don't particularly know how the AI is generating planes for itself.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Awaiting
Yaks are
orders. Yes, sir.
not really a call-in, as far as I know.
Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
That's the magic of triggers, I guess.
Structure sold.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Oh, and that's another cool functionality that you, like, rarely ever get to see. Just in part because the minimap's rather small. But you can actually, like, have units attack, move, deposit, or
Affirmative. Awaiting.
anything, really, from the minimap.
Mission saved.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
And there you have it. Once everything is cleared, you have some units spawn on the southern part of the map, and their only function is to go up north. Kind of makes the entire thing really, really,
Silos.
really boring.
Building. Silos needed.
It doesn't help that
Construction complete.
I also have like a bigger navy than the Allies.
Building. Unit ready. Construction complete. Building. Unit lost. Construction
Yes, sir.
complete. Low power.
Like, you know you're bored when you just figure, ah, screw it, I'll build gap generators everywhere.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Construction complete.
Yes, sir.
Cannot deploy.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Silos needed. Silos needed. Training. Unit ready.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Base is under attack.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Training. Unit
Reporting.
ready.
Green. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Ready and waiting. F1. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Silos
Yes, sir.
needed.
I thought it was kind of weird that a grenadier and a flamethrower can actually kill each other. Under the right circumstances, of course.
Cancel. Construction complete. Building. Construction complete. Mission accomplished.